Ohayou gozaimasu. My name is Mr. Ryan. I come from Dublin in Ireland. I am the Minister of Communications, Energy and Natural Resources in the Irish Government. I want to thank Minister Haraguchi. I want to thank particularly Nikkei Shimban for inviting me, in particular Mr. Tsuno Okita. I am very honored to be here to share some of the work we are doing in the development of ICT technology in our country that I hope will be of interest to you. I want to give some very brief initial background, just very briefly to introduce Ireland, my country. It's a very old country. Our golden era was probably back in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century. We had monks developed a center for Celtic Christianity, combined with, they brought back, revived some ancient Greek, Arabic and Latin texts, and they went to the rest of Europe and set up colleges and taught the rest of Europe for that long period. It was the height of our civilization, something we remember with pride. You'll recognize maybe James Joyce, one of our writers, our great writers, which we are also very proud of, who emigrated out of the country. And we're also proud, I think, in recent years that we have also had real success as a country, that we developed creativity, we developed a new economy that brought our people home, that saw us being very successful. You would also maybe be aware that that has been challenged in recent times. We've had a very difficult economic environment. We had a property bubble, which we are now getting over. And it has been a difficult economic environment for the last 2 to 3 years. But you might also have read, I think, the Wall Street Journal recently saying, lauding, praising the Irish example they cite. Or Newsweek had an article you might have seen 2 weeks ago, or a number of weeks ago, citing the gritty Irish government, but more importantly, the honest Irish people who have taken very difficult decisions to get our economic situation back on track. And that's happening. We are again trading, like Japan, we are a trading surplus country. We have quite a flexible and innovative workforce. The OECD, I think, in the OECD saw us as about the 4th country in the OECD in entrepreneurial ability. We were the 1st in the Global Creative Class Index. So it's a flexible, creative, enterprising country that I come from. One of the decisions we made, I want to maybe concentrate on it in recent years, that has helped us out of our economic difficulties, is an investment decision we made about 4 years ago now to invest in research and development. We set a target from 2006 to 2013 to invest €5.1 billion in scientific research and development. More particularly, we established an agency, Science Foundation Ireland, that was charged with developing real centres of international excellence in some key areas of technology, which would be peer-reviewed internationally before we established any such centres. And it was given a remit, just 2 areas to invest in, one in the biotechnology area and the other in ICT. And on the formation of the government, which I'm a member of, 3 years ago, we extended that into a 3rd area, into the whole area of clean energy, energy efficiency, and the development of clean energy supplies. And that investment, that research and development investment, has been huge, or is hugely important for us now as we work out of our difficult economic situation of recent years. One of the reasons for the success in the country is that we opened our country up. For the first, we became independent from England about 90 years ago. And for the first number of years, it was a matter of just holding your country together as an independent country, trying to be very self-sufficient. But from about 50 years, 55 years ago, starting to be a very open trading country. And that has proved very successful for us. We have about 1,000 multinational companies in Ireland, from all over the world, large number of American, other European companies. And it's a very successful. I was very interested. I was looking at the translation devices you may be listening to. If you look on the back, it says IR Digital in it. I think this made in Ireland. It's very nice for me to come along this morning, and that was the first thing that I saw by one of the companies. I'm sure the name is up there. But it has, one of the reasons our success is because we are a central location in Europe for a large number of multinational companies. Included in that, we have a good number of very important Japanese companies which are very welcome in our country. Fujitsu, Takedo, and Astellas in the pharmaceutical, and starting now companies as well in this new ICT area, which we are very keen to see coming to our country. I'm joking, I was saying to my colleagues who were working on these maps, I said, the typical Irish or typical any country, that's not the proper size of Ireland in comparison to Japan. We're slightly bigger there than we possibly should be. Ireland is roughly the same size as Hokkaido Island, roughly similar population. So it gives you a sense of the scale of the country. I come from Dublin. This is my city. The city James Joyce actually wrote about. They said that James Joyce said you could destroy Dublin, you could flatten it, and you'd be able to recreate it just from his books. Ulysses, his most famous book, went into the microcosm, the everyday life of one day in the life of my city that I love. Actually, you can see there, Digital Hub is the area just near the center of the city where we have a large number of digital companies, including Gala. People might know an online gaming company which has recently very much expanded their operations in our city. It's a city that's it's small by Japanese standards, 1 million people, but for us it's our capital. And it's a very international city. It's very much changed in the last 10, 20 years, in my mind, for the better, in that we have people of all nationalities. It's quite a mixed city. So in those companies like Gala are closer to the river, there you see the River Liffey running through it. Down along the river, we have a lot of the international companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Yahoo, PayPal. They're all based in this city, in the center of the city. And that makes for a very international mix. A large number of people coming from other countries to work in my city, which I think has been hugely successful for my city. I'm here today, though, if I can say, as much as I'm here as an Irishman, I'm here as a European minister. I'm a minister, I'm a member of the Council of Ministers for both the Energy Council and also the Telecommunications Council, which is responsible for European policy in developing our digital economy. And increasingly, in our economy, it is that European influence that is driving our policy direction. You know that the Eurozone has been through a difficult time in recent times. So people are questioning, oh, you know, the European Union project, it must be in a difficult space. It is. But from my experience as a member of the Council of Ministers, I see the political project of the European Union as very strong. I think people should be very careful to underestimate the real resilience and the political commitment that exists within Europe in our project of cooperation between our member countries. And I find my experience on the digital ICT side or on the energy side is a lot of the really good progressive thinking is coming from a European-led perspective, which I find very useful. Particularly, I'd say, in the area of climate change. I'm a Green Party minister. We have a coalition government in Ireland. I come from the Green Party, an environmental party, and my commitment to that European Union project is partly because I've seen the European Union taking hugely, in my mind, progressive and positive steps in setting up the framework for us to tackle our climate change challenge. We got political agreement before going to Copenhagen that we would cut our emissions by 20% from 1990 levels, that we would develop our renewables energy supply by 20% and develop efficiencies in our system by 20%, improve our energy efficiency. We got that legally agreed, mandated across all the European countries, and that's an example in my mind of how the political project in Europe is working. And I want to concentrate, if I can, just my comments today or my contribution into this whole area about how energy efficiency and ICT can go together to help us meet those targets. In fact, I think it's the biggest opportunity for us to develop the efficiencies we need to use less materials as we develop our economic growth. That sense of that, or the sense of how that is possible, comes very much from my own job. As I said, I'm Minister for Communications and Minister for Energy as well. So I have responsibility for two of the main infrastructural arms that we need for a modern economy. And I see increasingly a synergy between the two, where there's a huge overlap in the energy regulation and ICT regulation. They're very similar markets. They're markets where there's changing technology. There's markets where there's good competition. And there's markets where the technology in ICT, particularly now, is starting to be very important in delivering energy efficiencies. So I find it very interesting. My particular ministerial role is, I think, a good combination of those two very important areas. So you see energy and power. If I can go on then just to show how, maybe some examples, and just some examples of the work we are doing in the Irish government of how we're going to try and make that mix happen between ICT and energy efficiency. I first came across the concept of cloud computing, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was a time when I was thinking of this climate change challenge. How do we reduce our emissions by 80%? How do we dematerialize our society by 80%? And I met someone who said to me, I said, cloud computing is going to have a big effect. And the simple concept that a laptop, take this laptop, if we take out the hard disk, if we just have this as an access device, we lose 4/5 of the energy use. It was just a very simple thought. I said, that makes sense. There's an immediate 4/5 reduction in energy use while still delivering the services that you want. I came to Japan 2 years ago to see what Japan was doing in ICT and energy efficiency, because Japan is a world leader. And again, I was confirmed when I saw the research that was going on in your government departments and in your academic or your research institutions, when they were looking at the development of fiber communications within the next 10 to 15 years, and thinking that there would be a 100-fold increase in the speed and the capability of the fiber communication systems. And I said to myself, as a green minister, I said, that's interesting. That gives me hope. That's the sort of quantum increase in productivity that will allow us to meet the quantum reductions we need to make in material use if we are to live within the natural resources of this planet. So I see cloud computing as one of the most fundamental economic developments now that can deliver what Herman Daly, the great American green economist, said, a steady state economic development. I don't know if people read Thomas Friedman or whether it's been translated to Japanese, but I also think he very much understands what's happening now with the modern economic development. His first book, The World is Flat, or a book from 4 or 5 years ago, showing how certain major developments in the ICT technological platforms had effectively led to the global economic development in recent years. And I think his latest book, is it Hot, Flat and Crowded, showing that it's not only is that ICT technological development is going to be important, but it has to be stitched into sustainable green economics, was to me a real indication that this area of cloud computing, which allows us to do that, is the next major economic technological development which allows our economies to develop and to succeed. And all the benefits of portability, in energy efficiency, in being able to access your data, whether it's via mobile device or whether it's your home computer or your office computer, it just seems, it is increasingly seen as, yes, that is a huge advantage, a huge leap forward, which we're now starting to make. And it's that, and there are difficulties, there are issues that we still have to tease out. issues around security, issues around privacy. So we have to do it in a way that gives people real confidence that their data is safe and secure, as well as being portable and accessible. Very briefly, if I can, this slide just sets out, I think, why I think in Ireland we have something to offer in this developing area. We have, well, firstly, we're a relatively cool country, not climate-wise, as well as other ways. So we have actually got a significant number of data centers, about 20 large data centers. Most of the large users, the likes of Google or Amazon, the likes of Microsoft, last year would have opened a major, one of the world's largest new data centers, and a very green data center, 50% more efficient than anything that would have been built 3 years ago. European Commission citing it as best practice in terms of new data center technology. And our climate is suitable because there isn't a very significant variation in temperature. We don't have very many hot days, so the use of energy in those data centers is relatively low. We are developing our fiber optic networks. We are not as advanced as Japan. We are starting our cable network to put in the 100 megabit fiber connectivity that we need. Our fixed line network will similarly be, is now starting to put in such high-speed technology. But we actually again have a lot to learn from the likes of Japan as to how that actually technology has been deployed and how it's been used. But what we have done is we have good international connectivity. For quite some time now, we have invested as a government and the market in good international connectivity between Ireland and the rest of the world. So while we are an island, the advantage of these fiber cables is that we are just as connected as New York or London or Paris or Tokyo in this international growing web. And we have, if I can just go back in a second for the last slide, we have other, as I said, most of the players, the key players in those 1,000 international companies that are based in Ireland, multinational companies, almost all the leading ICT companies have significant presences and are key players in either the delivery of the technology that you need for a cloud computing environment or key users. And as I said, our Science Foundation Ireland, this group which is responsible for developing centres of excellence in scientific research, has been in operation for about 6 or 7 years now, and we're starting to see really successful output coming from our research centres, particularly in the area of ICT in my mind, and particularly in this area of ICT and energy efficiency. So we have some good players in our country. Examples, I did think there's a speaker later on, Mr. Hashimoto, I think it is, from IBM. Well, IBM would have last year set up their European Cloud Computing Centre base in my city in Dublin. We've set up a cloud laboratory on the back of, they've set up a cloud laboratory on the back of that work. Hewlett-Packard last year set up their World Cloud Computing Centre in the west of Ireland. So we have a large number of players in the country who have expertise and an interest in this area, and that's something we want to build on. I wanted to go in, I'm conscious of time, I'll have to be timely here. Just give some examples of projects we're doing in government to try and assist this development. It was interesting, when I was in Japan 2 years ago, I remember asking the Japanese research people, I said, what is the experience with this 100 megabit fiber connectivity to the home? How is it working? And it was interesting to say it's working well, but the problem we have is in the switching and routing point, that they're heating up because of the volume of data traffic as we start to carry video on our mobiles and so on, that the switching and routing system cannot cope with the volume of data. One of the ways in which we're looking to improve our networks at home to cope with that phenomenon is we are investing in what we call an exemplar network. We're promoting a technology, making available a technology that was developed in Ireland by an Irish company called Intunes, which is looking at a new way of sending data along the fiber optic network. It's a colored-coded transmission of data, optical packet switching, and the transport and the switching is done at the one time, but depending on the color code that the information is sent in. So it's tunable lasers that actually change the color of the fiber optic message. And in doing that, reduce the amount of switching that has to be done at the far end of the transport of that piece of data. And we think this has a real potential, huge beneficial potential for the development of the internet, as it has to cope with the ever-increasing volume of data. So this is new technology. We think it is disruptive technology, potentially, for the world. But what we are doing is we are starting next month, the 15th of July. We are allowing companies to come in and to try out this technology, to test their transmission communications using a network which has this exemplar technology. And then we're going to deploy it out on a metropolitan ring around Dublin. And after that, if it's working the way we think it will work, on a national network. And again, doing it on an open access basis. In my mind, the development of this new internet technology works best when you're sharing information, when you're actually allowing access as much as possible to new technology so people can try it and test it and adapt it and improve it. That's the characteristics of innovation in the internet that work best, in my mind. And the exemplar network is one example in a very important area of constraint now on the internet, where we think we may have something to offer to the rest of the world who may want to come and try such technology. It will allow, as well as being very energy efficient, it dramatically reduces the energy that would be needed in the transportation of that data by reducing the amount of switching that would need to be done. But also it allows the development, we believe, of the semantic web, the sort of two-way transmission of data in a much more flexible way. It allows for really high-quality video transmission. And so that's one of the reasons why we see it as a significant, possibly disruptive technology, which we are investing in at this present time. Another area of development, just again, I'll be brief here, I won't go into the full details, I can't in the time that's available. We see the development of the Internet of Things as a hugely important phenomenon. As I said earlier on, we do not have as much high-speed fiber in our country because our housing is very much dispersed. So we have to rely on mobile communications, wireless communications technologies a lot. And the benefit or potential coming from that is we're also looking at developing, using those wireless communication systems for remote transmission of data from remote sensory devices. There's one particular project I wanted to show. It's called the Smart Bay project. It was developed initially on the back of the government making its information easily available, freely available, data about the environment, in this instance a bay in Galway in the west of Ireland. And IBM have been using that data now in a very clever project, the Smart Bay project, that involves such wireless transmission of data and the ordering and the efficient use of that data. And it's a good example of an Internet of Things project that the private sector, IBM, and the government, via our Marine Institute, is developing. And it's a particularly important project, I think, and are an example. Actually, we were in Japan, as I said, 2 years ago, and one of the areas we're looking to progress work with the Japanese government is to say in the plans that you have here for ubiquitous zones, particularly in wireless communications, is something that we can work on together. As an island economy with, like Japan, a very small military, we have a good spectrum allocation resource available to us, and we use that in a very flexible test and trial basis. So people who might want to use new allocations on the spectrum band, we try and give them spectrum and allow them to kind of develop some of these Internet of Things wireless connected solutions. It's an example of a project, but one that I think is actually quite real. Also, what we're working on a lot is our renewable energy technologies. If we're to develop this cloud computing system to be really energy efficient, it has to be, as well as being kind of reducing the amount of energy, I think, from my mind, it has to be using clean energy, carbon-free energy. And in Ireland, we have doubled in the last 3 years our volume of wind power. We're up to about 15% of our electricity now comes from renewables. We're setting a target of 40% for the end of this decade, coming from mainly wind power. But beyond that, we see the potential for us to go out into the ocean to develop wave technology in particular, or offshore wind. And that, backed up with the energy efficiency, gives you in the cloud computing infrastructure a really clean, low emissions system. If you can be very efficient in how you use it and have a clean electricity supply, it has a significant development. We are very much pushing the boundaries now of how much renewable energy you can get on a grid system. And it's an area where we actually are developing a certain amount of capability and expertise because we are pushing the outer edge of what's possible. I'm conscious now of time, but I wanted to give another example. And it's another example where we're working with the Japanese government, actually. We had a very good meeting here in March of green energy technology, looking to share information, how we develop this smart grid, a grid that is very energy efficient and copes with a lot of renewable energy supplies, which are variable. And there are a lot of very good Irish companies working with Japanese companies to see how we can share that technology. And it's interesting, as Minister for Energy, when we start looking at what it means to put in a smart meter into a building so you measure the energy use, or when we start looking at electric vehicles, that actually you see very much it is a data management issue, it is a communications issue, it is an ICT issue, that the engineering and the energy aspect is actually relatively easy. The really important and difficult bit is the data communication systems, and particularly the behavioral changes you want to get from using your data is the really complex and important part of how we develop what's been called as the smart grid technology. There's a particular project which we're working on in Ireland, which is an industry research collaborative venture looking to see how we do exactly that, how we make our smart grid system work. I mentioned Science Foundation Ireland, just to give an example of how it is starting to work for us. We have about 600 examples of where companies are now working in a collaborative basis with some of those research centres that Science Foundation Ireland set up. So it's an important collaborative space we want to support. And in this area of getting good, smart energy management within the home, we've set up a centre in Cork. Tyndall is our Scientific Ireland, our Science Foundation Ireland centre, which is real expertise in mobile communications systems. And we are now bringing in energy companies, the likes of United Technologies from the United States, to see how they can set up the home energy management systems that will use that data communication system to deliver the energy efficiencies that we want to get. And that was, again, just started in May this year, but an example of a real-life project where we're bringing research and industry together. Lastly, and not least, because it's one of the other reasons we're very interested in what's happening in Japan, we see a huge opportunity for the development of electric vehicles. As a small island country with a large amount of renewable energy supply and no oil, it makes sense for us to develop our electric vehicles. We have reached memorandums of association with Nissan Renault and with Mitsubishi, and we hope with other Japanese car companies, to bring their vehicles into the Irish market. We have a quite advanced electricity grid, and we'll be one of the first countries in the world that has a nationwide grid of plug-in points. No matter where you go on the island, we will have the capability of plugging in and recharging vehicles. But again, if you look at it, if you look at what actually is going to make this work, yes, you need good cars, and yes, you need good batteries. But for me, the really important and interesting part of this is around the data communications, the ICT component. It is, in a sense, another application of cloud computing, because you have to get all the information from the charging point back into a central server. You have to make it available in the car, and in the home, and in the office. And it's a really classic example of how it's the ICT technology which is fundamentally changing, here in this case, the transport technology. And what we want to do in our country, we don't make cars unlike Japan, but we can make the software and the behavioral test systems that will actually show how this works on a more human interface. And that's an area where we want to develop expertise, where we want to work in collaboration with Japanese companies. I'll finish, as I said, very briefly. I'll go back to the basic point I wanted to make, the very simple message. The reason I came here today, thanks to the invitation of Nikkei, is that we see there's real opportunity, as I said, in this new ICT environment for collaboration. We think, I know, Europe is committed to this project of cutting emissions. And Europe sees communications technology as being one of the most important components. So we are going to develop this technology. We want to develop it, and we will. Japan I've seen as the same commitment. Japan, the same expertise, probably greater expertise. But America, similarly. People, all parts of the technology centers in the world are now looking at this issue in terms of how we develop a new economy which actually uses less carbon. And what my simple hope is that some of the Japanese companies will consider coming to Ireland because we are a good test and trial location. It's a small country. We have most of the leading countries in the world in ICT, as it happens, based in our country and doing a lot of research in this area at the present time. I think we will work better together in collaborative ventures, both government and private sector, and across continents, Japan and Europe working together. Because the urgency from an environmental politician's viewpoint is all the stronger every day, that we are quick and strong and collaborative in tackling the major energy challenges that we face. I think it's not just it's not just a question of economic recovery, it's not just a question of comparative competitive advantage. I think it's actually a new economy that gives people a sense of purpose, gives people a sense of hope, gives people a sense of something new and something that they can really do, which gives them a great sense of honor and achievement. And I have that sense in the Japanese people I have met. They're very well able and they see it that in the same way. That's why I was very glad and honored to come here today and to listen to what you are doing and learn again, as well as explaining some of the things that we're doing in my own country. Thank you very much.